one ambiguous comment who just expressed the fact that Flux has knees now, and I was like, I can't tell if this is if this is a statement of fact.
Main character has knees? No, I don't buy games like that.
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 503 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, I'm a miscellaneous programmer.
I'm Sam and I'm the artist.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is January 17th, 2025. Before we get started, we have a warning. There's going to be profanity in this show. And we'd also like to thank our recurring supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you so much for your recurring donations to help keep this podcast going. So a lot's happening. It's been a week. I think we're a little sleepy. We're a little tired. So let's talk about what all happened this week. So for starters, we announced Crashlands 2, and that entails all kinds of things. Yeah, sorry, we announced the release date, which is April 10th. Mm-hmm. So it's in less than 3 months from this recording of this podcast. We were aiming for Q1, but it was just a little too tight in terms of like trying to find a place to slot the release in that like wasn't conflicting with other big things happening.
We knew we needed all of February, and then March was kind of out. It's got the Steam spring sale. It's got just a whole bunch of shit was going on. Yep.
We were debating launching it on April 1st.
Yeah,
because we were like, that would be kind of hilarious to launch a game on April Fool's Day, because then it's like, is that real? But then we thought, if there's a question of whether it's real, will people not
I think the bigger problem, because also nobody else wants to launch that day. So we were like, well, maybe it would be like the only game. Which
exactly. But just go against the grain.
The problem is, we talked a lot in the past about from the marketing side of when you're trying to get eyeballs on your game, you're participating in the attention economy, right? And so you're not competing with other games. You're just competing with literally anything that takes a person's attention. And so April 1st is like attention Armageddon, like there's a jillion articles, there's pranks, there's memes, there's so much stuff going on and so much noise that I think you don't want to be competing with that environment.
Yeah, and then if you try to put something out there that's actually true and actionable, it
just sows more confusion.
It's just confusing.
I just wish we lived in an opposite society, because it's basically April 1st is like, hey guys, let's just be silly for a day. Just one day out of the year.
How Halloween's like spooky and fun,
But what would it be like if that was the only day of the year that we were serious?
Here's the thing. April 1st, the whole premise of April 1st is like, hey, let's lie for fun, right? And I would argue that is the premise of every day in the modern world that is true. It's just that on April 1st now it's like it's announced ahead of time that it's for fun. Well, I think on April 1st it's for fun. The other days of the year it's for fun and profit.
That's true. Yeah, of course.
So this time it's all about just being silly. Although of course there's going to be some meme coins that launch. There's going to be the profit motive there on April 1st. Also, you can't escape how horrible the world is, even on April 1st.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's an uplifting message.
Thanks for the positive message. That's great. Thank you. That's great.
We know, Adam.
Hey,
we
the
know.
Only good holiday
we've
Halloween,
been here, okay?
And I stand by it.
It's true.
Yeah, Halloween's pretty dope.
We gotta wait.
Though.
You're gonna die, so you got that's
great.
Nice,
now Sam's coming in swinging from the other side.
That one wasn't on me.
Oh my God, you guys, this is rough. But, we are going to die, and so we got to make sure we get this game out quick.
That's true.
Bring it home.
Yep.
So we are launching it on April 10th. We have a lot of shit to do. A lot of shit. So Sam has been making how many art assets did you make this
92.
week? 92.
Can we post that actually? Just like the grid? Because it's a fun...
No.
Too many spoilers? Okay, too bad.
So sad.
Yeah, I'll just tell
everybody. It'd be about 92 spoilers.
It looks cool and is very fun. Like anytime the art team spits out something, we're like, here's all the shit that I did over the past X days or whatever, right? And it's like some dope grid of stuff. And every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, it'll be fun to share this. But I'm always told.
Absolutely not. Maybe afterwards, post-launch.
Yeah, it is kind of fun too, because we revealed a bunch of stuff in the trailer, and now we're seeing people talking about it and speculating and like trying to figure out what it all means. And And every now and then, where one of us is coming into the Discord and just kind of like vaguely answering questions, but like keeping the mystery kind of sprinkled in there. And it's been very cool to see some of the things that people are speculating about that they're correct about, but then they're like, that can't be.
Or even less like
is.
speculating than commenting. So I'll just say one of the things that somebody said without giving the explanation of why it was particularly good. People will find that out later. But someone was like, because they were talking about the art and how cool it was and stuff. And someone was like, I'm kind of disappointed by the bog because it kind of feels like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel it feels like kind of dried up and like it's
not
lost
as
all of
squishy
its
and
fat
fat
and stuff, and they were expressing this as like, oh, it's kind of a bummer that the art for the bog, doesn't capture the same effect as it did the original. And I'll just say
there's reasons.
That's correct. and the fact that was the observation, I think is a delightful demonstration that Sam pulled off the effect he was going for. But you'll figure out why once you get the game when it comes out.
It'll all make sense.
Eventually. Yeah. So otherwise this week it's been just a lot of like keeping an eye on the press and the response and the comments on the YouTube video. We got a couple of alerts from Discord because we had so many people coming into the Discord server that they were like, this is suspicious. Is this okay? Are you guys okay with this? We had to be like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
That's great. Yeah. My guess is it's going to happen because we got the beta test form up, right? So as of less than 24 hours in, we already had 350 signups. So that's moving.
We haven't really checked in since. So
yeah, so it's moving. It's already a lot more than we were intending to actually have. So the probability of getting in is starting to get a little low. But I think a lot of what's driving the spike in Discord is that because we mediate the beta test through the Discord, right? So as part of the form fill out, because I need to be able to verify that the Discord username that somebody provides is real and is at our server. And so it's just a requirement that if you want to be in the beta, you got to be in our Discord. And so I think what we're seeing is each morning, another like 10,000 plus emails goes out through our newsletter, which links to the form. People go to the form, like, oh, I got to get in the Discord. Then they get in the Discord. And then, so we just had these like spikes each morning.
Waves of people.
Yeah. So my guess is it's what time is it right now? It's 9:00. So probably in the next like half hour, we're going to get another alert because the emails just went out. That's like, hey, something looks fucking fishy.
You guys keep getting waves of weirdos swarming your Discord.
Every morning we want them. 9 a.m. Very suspicious.
Bring them in.
Well, it's good. It's like, I think, in the case of indie dev, the question of like, given where we sit in the market, right, where it's like we're making a game that it's big from like indie standards in terms of the scope of it and the cost of it, the duration of dev, etc. But it is the smallest of potatoes by general, AAA standards or general game dev standards. So there's an interesting question here, which is like, what do you expect to happen, right, when you do something like the release date announcement for a game, or what do you hope to have happen for a game when you're participating in the industry at the level that we're at? Right.
Yeah. Because a release date announcement is weird because there's nothing really to do.
Correct.
Like people can't really do a whole lot.
Yeah. They might be able to, again, like wish list or pre-register or what, like those sort of pre-activities. But aside
you can't play it.
Yeah, you can't play it. It's like the majority of like noisiness from launching a game comes from everybody playing it. Right. Not just from
people going into communities and talking about it and sharing
the thing that players care more about than anything is the discovery that a game is going to exist, so they can start getting excited. Yeah, and then the game existing. Those are the two things. So, and I think that's basically what you're saying is you have to figure out who is the market for any kind of an announcement, right?
Yes.
And I think for the release date announcement, we have a few markets, but one that I was kind of hoping would be a market just kind of isn't, which is new people who aren't already familiar with the thing, right? But I think the real market is the existing community who, again, all they really want is the game to be out. And so now they've got a date. So that's the most like reachable market for a release announcement. And then you have press, which I think if you're like in our case where, it's an indie title, so it's hard to get press attention. Press needs something to hold on to. Because for like a smaller title. And so a release date is like, that's basically putting it on their radar and saying, oh, hey, this game is because press's whole job is to plan out what content comes out on their platforms when, right? And try to like sneak things between other things and know what they should be looking at and try to figure out like what's going to be popular or whatever. So if a game isn't coming out and it's not a AAA title, then they don't care. They can't care.
Yeah.
Right?
So like if GTA 6, you know, if they leak like a 16 pixel blurry thing, you know, there'll be 3,000 articles about that, right?
And it's because the fan base is so big that when you do that, like
you
generate
sell
interest,
ads.
Right? People want to see them.
People will go there because the built-in viewer base. So we've talked in the past about how kind of like it's strange to call people influencers on the internet, right? Because like it's the algorithms and the fans that dictate what gets created, because people will create whatever there's already a huge demand for. And so we're kind of in this weird liminal space. We're in this middle ground where like we have something that a lot of people know about, and we moved a lot of copies of the original Crashlands, but at the same time, that was quite a while ago. And compared to the level of success of even like high performing indies, it's still pretty
like
down
Stardew
there.
Valley or
Oh my god!
I think we're reading Stardew Valley has sold for 40 million copies or something like that.
You're talking levels of success that are just like
orders of magnitude.
Orders of magnitude that are so I
larger.
think that's what's weird about it, is like we're still on that. We're like in that success. You're a successful independent studio, but you're still in that like just
you gotta brawl.
We're a working studio. It's like the idea of like a working actor, right? Or whatever that phrase is, right? Where it's like the ones who like every year still have to make sure they're in stuff, and
some actors got to be in commercials and shit. You know, like that's where we.
Yeah, you still got to make sure
we got to be on that grind.
Yeah, so like I think that's what's interesting about it is in this space. Then, you know, when it comes to like what we're hoping to get out of the announcement versus what we did get, for example. For me, it's like everything's hitting actually great because we got a bunch of articles from press about it, which, you know, in the case of like Levelhead, didn't happen. We've got
Levelhead wasn't even covered after launch.
As a quick note about that, one funny thing was I was, you know, this week I was Googling Crashlands 2 to see like what articles are popping up. And I remembered that there was a time in like year 2 of dev where we were getting some of the Google Play stuff kind of established.
Yeah.
And we created a Crashlands 2 Google Play store page that was going to be like an internal test page. And it had nothing on it, but it just happened to be like public when it was created. And then we made it private. It's like for testing. It was up for like an hour. Yeah. And a bunch of articles appeared about like, oh, Crashlands 2 appeared on the Google Play Store, but we think it was just some kind of a test, right? Yeah. And it was like that was like our version of like the GTA thing, right?
Exactly. That's like the blurry pixel that people get excited about.
It was like, okay, we realized that like we're making something that people want to talk about and people 100%. Are excited about, because even when there's nothing, people are still talking.
Yes. You can also see how much the media landscape has changed just in 2 years, because like you're saying, like that was an accidental thing that people picked up on and it became like a thing, right? And then today, like with this announcement, there were a few outlets who are new to us. Like I didn't even know they existed. I think they just are new, right? Who I think also just would have like, they've been covering Crashlands 2 the whole time. They would have shut up, right? There's no overlap at all between like the places where Crashlands 2's announcement was covered this time around and that time, right? And I think because at that time there were a whole bunch of all the sites died, but especially on the mobile side. I think
mostly it was mobile focused actually. The first time around.
Because I think because like Crashlands is still by far most popular on mobile, original Crashlands, and for a long time, like anytime you saw a listing on a mobile review site of top games, whatever, like Crashlands has been on those lists the whole time, right? Yep. And the people who ran those sites, like we knew a lot of them. We met them at GDC, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so they were all very excited about Crashlands, but we're Crashlands 2. By the time we got here, though, the sites are gone.
It's basically just Pocket Gamer, I think, was the only one I saw that. I was like,
it's Pocket Gamer and some new stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of smaller new ones have popped up.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like ones who I know covered the original, back in 2016. Yes, I think
the longer we're in this, the weirder it gets.
Yeah, it is weird. It is weird. But I think so.
Churn.
You know, we got like a nice big chunk of press, and which is fantastic. And then you see these wish list bumps, like really nice wish list bumps on our side, which is like, again, it's really hard to cause those things to happen, right? As an indie dev, you hope that you can do it with something like, again, using this is the last sort of news moment, right, before the actual launch. it's the last shot to see like, can we do anything with this? And you do see a nice big bump on the wish list side. And again, it's not insane. It's not like like 10x or 1000x or whatever else, but
it's never going to be. It's never going to be anything compared to like if the store just themselves puts the game in front of people, then wish lists just go ballistic, right? But like for us to try to do it, there's like so many layers, right? Because we need to convince press or other people to talk about the game, and then they need to link to the game, and then people need to follow the link over there, and then hit the wish list button. So it's like 4 or 5 steps deep. Yeah, you know.
And but I do think there's a good note here too, which is like so again, who is it for? On as far as
because we're missing one more market.
And the last one is basically the platforms, actually, right?
And or kind of biz dev in general, just people involved with the business to business level of game stuff.
Yeah, and so like I think that's what's also been very good and also interesting, which is like in our case we've been talking to everybody under the sun about Crashlands for like 4 years now. But in like our talks with Google, for example, like we kind of stalled out like early on. We didn't really keep up with them because we were like, I guess they don't care, you know. But then we get a note from them after the announcement, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? What's going on with this?"
And so
part of it though is Google does a lot of robot stuff, and so like
they do,
it's not necessarily that they don't care. I think it's that internally their employees are always like surrounded by an army of robots.
Yeah, so there's a lot of noise, it seems like, in that system.
So if you're trying to like communicate with somebody at Google, like at some point a robot like just gets involved and then just takes the fucking conversation somewhere else. And just,
it's just hard to break through the barrier.
Yeah, it's like that. There's that, and then on the App Store side, you know, we've been in contact with them for a while, but it's nice to see like kind of a renewed interest based on then the pages being live, the pre-orders being ready, all this stuff, which is all really good, right? That's exactly what you want.
Yep. And there's a bunch of publishers, especially for like mainland China, who've been in touch with us kind of the whole time. But all of a sudden they're all reappearing into my inbox, you know, like, oh, hey.
Of course.
And so like all kinds of business related stuff just like reappears when the announcement. So I think it's kind of, it was that interesting thing is
who is it for?
Yeah, who is it for? And I think from a biz dev standpoint, a game doesn't exist until it exists, right? And until then, it's really risky for all parties. It's risky for the devs because, like, who knows how long it's going to take to make it and how expensive.
Well, and if you don't have a launch date, then what is it?
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's
just a wish.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're trying to work with a publisher or with any third party who's like also trying to put some skin in the game, of course, for their kind of the reward, you know, then they're all really tentative about it until they can see what the game is. So if you don't have a playable, they're extremely tentative. If you've got a playable but are like, but you know, maybe a few more years of dev, they're like, well, then maybe you want to finish it.
Come back in a few years.
Yeah, exactly. And so like this is that thing too, where it's like, oh yeah, we got a launch date. It's in a few months. It's like, it's coming in a hot. And so now everybody's like, okay, if they want to have any kind of relationship with the launch of Crashlands 2, then like
now's the time.
They got to get in on it.
Yeah.
And so the incentives are now aligned on the biz dev side really well. And again, for the people who already want the game. Right.
Yeah. And so I think the other thing we experiment with, of course, is, the game's translated into a bunch of different languages. And one of the interesting things, I found interesting from my cursory look at the numbers just from yesterday. So keep in mind, we announced on Wednesday, the release date. And it's only Friday morning, so actually I've only seen 1 day of data so far, right? As far as like
because it lags by a day, so you've seen Wednesday.
Like just about 48 hours since the start of the announcement rollout. So.
Yeah, and so one of the interesting things though is that one of the tactics we used was recutting the trailer for a few different languages, so simplified Chinese, Japanese, traditional Chinese, so that the language, even though there's only like 2 or 3 moments of words on screen from the actual game, that those are actually in those languages specifically. And a lot of that was because we know that there's more sensitivity to basically whether or not the game is presented in that particular language for a player.
Like Japanese players in particular are very accustomed to games having Japanese.
Yeah. So if you show them
and if it doesn't, they're just like, well, then I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Right? So if you show them a trailer where you're like, well, the game is is completely localized, but then the trailer doesn't have that shown, which you can do. Like you do this on Steam, you can do all these like language specific trailers, whatever. Then there's a good chance that they don't notice. Like they don't notice that the game could be localized into their language or whatever else, or assume it's not. And so that was nice to see that we had some really big pickup on the Japanese side in particular compared to like what we usually get from wish lists. suddenly just like a big surge of them. And it's like,
That's what we're trying to be
maybe
really
that's work.
careful about with like the store page assets, at least, because we've talked a lot about how like doing localization is really hard, but also what we haven't really talked so much about is like how do you then get the localized content to the player in various contexts, which is actually way harder because each one is different. So the store pages at least make it really straightforward where they're just like, hey, do you have assets in other languages? Switch the language, upload the asset, and then that's it, right? And so we've tried to be really careful about making sure that on all the store pages, all the platforms, that we have as localized of content as we can. Because the idea there is that it's the same thing if you're an English-speaking user and you're looking at a game, like a Japanese game or something, and you're trying to get hints as you're like looking over the thing to be like, will this be a good experience to play as an English speaker, right? And so if everything is in Japanese the whole time, you're going to be like, oh, probably not, right? It's probably going to be in Japanese or like translated weirdly, right? Because otherwise I would expect to see the English, right?
Right.
And it's true in any other language, right? So when you're looking at people are trying to, again, like we always talk about, people are trying to find reasons to not get a game when they look at store assets, right? And so one of those things that we wanted to really make sure we were doing is make it as clear as possible. Hey, this game is for you. That if we did all the work and spent all the money to localize the dang game into a language that we didn't stop
go that
short,
one little extra inch and upload stuff onto the store.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Absolutely.
So I think we might end up going back and because we only did that for a couple languages for the trailer in particular for those more languages we know are more sensitive on the English side. So we might end up doing that just kind of across the board. It doesn't. It's one of those things where like it doesn't take that much work but again, then you have to do like 8 fucking times, and you don't know if it's worth it. So it seems like it might be worth it now. But that was a nice little pickup from there. And then otherwise, I think I always have like a mixed. Like as a person who did like that art for the game, it's always a little challenging for me to like want to engage with the YouTube, like see people's comments about stuff, because anytime you change something that people already like, so in the case of Crash, like people like the original game, everyone's just got feelings about kind of everything, And
I will say that for this time around, because I've read every YouTube comment on all 5 of the videos I put up as part of this process, and they are universally excited. I haven't, at least on the YouTube stuff, I haven't seen a single comment about the art in a negative way. Only positive comments, except for one person who was like, one ambiguous comment who just expressed the fact that Flux has knees now, and I was like, I can't tell if this is a statement of fact.
Main character has knees? No. I don't buy games like that.
But really, it's like it's universally positive, which is extremely rare for us, I think, to accomplish. So, in terms of Sam being able to like look at the evidence around you of like, oh yeah, people are actually into it. It's nearly universal, and it is true that the negative outliers have excessive weight. But I would say that this is. Each announcement for Crashlands 2, but in particular this one, has been as we talked about earlier in the podcast, the world's kind of shitty, and I don't have a lot of faith in humanity, and especially in games and our job doing games. Like there's a lot of negativity out there. Given all of that, I would say it's been remarkable how positive the response has been to everything we've been doing for Crashlands 2.
I love seeing the comments where people are like, I spent my childhood playing Crashlands.
Those are my favorite.
There's a lot. It's like a lot.
That's so cool because I think we don't have as much as we love swearing. We don't put that into our games, and we do have something that's kind of interesting as we've like grown as a studio. Is we've put a lot more depth into our games in terms of like the types of things that we talk about, and so like Crashlands 2, I would say has adult themes in it, in the sense that like
it's more like adulthood themes. If that,
there's a lot of things about connection with people, about companies being horrible,
all sorts of stuff,
about like environmental problems. Like there's a lot of things going on, but it's packaged in a way that like it's interspersed with a lot of like humor as well, and lightheartedness and jokes.
It's
and
mostly
wholesome moments and stuff,
goofy, weird shit, and then occasional, very poignant moments where you're like, "Wow, I just felt feelings now."
Yeah,
I didn't know where they came from.
So I feel like and then like the original game was much more firmly in the goofy camp,
Yes.
And like, I think as we've matured and our skills have grown and our team has grown, then, you know, we've been able to kind of like get more perspectives and like get more depth into the game and stuff like that. So it'll be kind of interesting to see like, you know, people who grew up playing Crashlands 2, and now as they are growing up, like the game is growing up with them, you know, which is I'm very excited to see.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I think it's also
how people respond.
You know, we started the project too. It is a risk in a particular way to be like we're gonna change it. We're gonna change actually quite a bit of it. You know, can you keep enough of the spirit there that people play it and they're like, this is definitely Crashlands. But where actually, if you just compared them side by side, they're just not the fucking same game anymore. You know what I mean? Like, can we do that?
They have the same soul.
Yeah.
You know,
can you somehow do
they're very
that?
different.
I think we did. It's one of those things where it's like still gotta wait to know if you did it, if that's good that you did that. You know what I mean?
I will say one of the kind of interesting things about making it has been that I don't know how else to describe it, but like the original game has a gravitational pull because like when we were originally conceiving of all the different game systems and the types of things we were going to do in Crashlands 2, our original plan was to deviate much further from the original in all kinds of ways. And as we tried to do that, a lot of those deviations just didn't really work or they were way too complicated. They didn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. And whenever we were looking for solutions of how to fix it, you know, the original game is right there. And the original game is like, well, I did it like this and it worked great. You know, like, damn it. You know, and then we kind of pivot back over and we would implement some version of what the original game did, but, you know, in like an upgraded sense. But yeah, it's been a cool journey to kind of see. Yeah. So yeah, announcement went great. One other news item is that the Global Game Jam is happening next week. Well, I guess as like when this episode comes out, it'll be like 2 days after this episode comes out. It's happening on Friday, January 24th. If you are not in the St. Louis area, this is a global online event. So I recommend doing it if you're interested at all in making games, or maybe even if you're not. I don't know. Like it's kind of a transformative thing. Yeah. I mean, it is the event that kind of kickstarted a lot of what happened in our studio.
Well, I think it's
back in 2012.
If it sounds fun in any way to you, independent of whether the idea of making games like as a hobby or a career or whatever is appealing, but just the idea of like making a video game, if that sounds cool, then it's worth doing.
Yeah. So this event, you know, does hold up a special place in our history because of how it kind of helped to originate the studio. And it's the event that brought me to St. Louis because I was hired at a St. Louis studio based on what Sam and I did at the Global Game Jam in 2012. So it's a great event. Definitely do it if you can, and if you're interested. If you're in St. Louis, there is a St. Louis game developers group that you can go to meetup.com. I think it's just called St. Louis Game Developers. You can search for that. And they have a Global Game Jam event that's going on at UMSL, so University of Missouri in St. Louis. And they have all the details on there. I'll be going to say a few words at the kickoff. I'll probably not make a game just because I'll probably still just be working on Crashlands. Yeah. I'll be doing my own jam. We keep joking that we're in like the Xenos paradox right now of game dev, where it's like every week we are 50% closer to done.
Yep.
And it's just never fucking done. So I'll probably be just banging out a bunch of odds and ends and bug fixes and all kinds of stuff during the Global Game Jam.
Are you going to be hanging out there to do stuff, or just?
I'll probably I'll be there the first night to speak and then just like meet some people and mingle. I may pop by on Saturday, and then I do want to go on Sunday to see the
games.
Oh, it's so fun
to see all the wrap up.
Yeah.
Just chat with everybody. Because like, every now and then people really surprise you at those things. Like somebody just comes up with something just absolutely hilarious or goofy or in some cases just like very innovative. Like you guys remember Surgeon Simulator?
Yeah.
That came from the Global Game Jam.
Just a bunch of them.
That was a Global Game Jam game.
And also the St. Louis event, it's a really, really good one. But also it's one of the few kind of like there's only a handful across the world where local organizers find a way to like have a building open for the whole time, so you can actually jam with people
instead of it just being an online.
Yeah, so event. It's kind of a special thing, especially with all I guess post COVID. If you haven't been out of the house too much, it's a good time. It's a really good time.
It can get
Yeah.
stinky in there though, since everyone's just kind of like there the whole time. So if you
can.
are attending, do some hygiene, do some personal
Do it.
hygiene.
Well, and it's been weird because we would go to 3 or 4 game jams a year here in St. Louis, and then we would do them all the time. As the studio grew and as like the types of games that we were working on grew, we've done fewer and fewer jams, and also as we've gotten busier. But then COVID really just like absolutely threw a wrench into the game jam scene here in St. Louis, because I think at the peak of it, it was like 250 people would come to this event.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. The last Global Game Jam was huge.
It's massive. And nowadays it's a lot less just because COVID derailed everything. People get busy. And also I think things have changed a bit in terms of like the games industry, because there was like this indie boom, in the mid 2010s, where it's like everybody like Unity was appearing and things like that. And people were like, oh yeah, making games.
It was a hopeful time. It
was a very hopeful time. Yeah. And so even if people weren't like, specifically planning on becoming professional game developers, there was still like this idea that like it might happen.
Yeah.
it could. Yeah.
Maybe I'll make something cool, And I think a lot of people have kind of aged out of that or just got busy, and also like the industry has changed and COVID happened and just a lot of shit
Well, like we
kind of
talked
happened.
about, like all the news you hear about the game industry right now is this company
not-
fired
it's
half
not
its staff.
hopeful.
This company closes. Yeah. I mean, I just saw another one this morning. It's just like another studio closed 2 of its subsidiary studios and fired 30% of its staff. And like that's every single day of the past
keeps
2
happening.
years.
Or a studio, gets shut down because it had been acquired by somebody, and then they just deleted it off the spreadsheets. So things change, but I still stand by. I think
It's still
events
just
like
as fun
this-
as ever to make games. You know?
Probably more fun now, honestly, as far as the making. Yeah.
Yeah, the tools are better, way better.
Yeah.
So
Actually, I heard interesting. There's a podcast interview with Mike Bithell on. There's a I want to say studio. No, there's a press outlet called Aftermath.site, which is it's a subscription thing. It's run by some like like Polygon or Kotaku people or something who are trying to figure out like how do you do like a games journal thing in the modern era, given how shitty ads are and how shitty the internet is. But they got a podcast. So I can't remember what it's called, but if you like go to aftermath.site, you'd be able to find it there. But they do. So their first interview was with Rami about Arabic and games. It was really interesting. The next one was with a horse expert who she sells her services as an expert on equine stuff to games. So she had a lot of commentary about like horses in Red Dead Redemption, the kinds of things people fuck up when they're doing horses, like really interesting stuff. And then
she's
the
playing
most
games.
recent
She's like,
one,
these horses are just not correct. I can't.
yeah, exactly.
She
Like,
opens up
animation's
Goat
weird.
Simulator and she's like, "This is not."
It was very interesting. But the most recent one was with Mike Bithell, who made Thomas Was Alone and a few other games, and now has a studio of like 30 people making like some Disney franchise stuff, right?
Shit. Nice.
And they were talking, and he was like basically talking about this whole like what it means to make games today, the scale of games today, what it means to be indie, right? It's a very interesting episode. I highly recommend going to watch it. But one of the points he was talking about was about how like the younger people coming up who are making games today have been making games in Roblox and making like mods in Minecraft, and they have a completely different entry point into games than people like in our generation did. Because like growing up for us, making games was fucking impossible. That wasn't a thing you got to just like do at home, right?
Yeah, I started in my 20s.
Yeah, exactly. Like we had to get started when we were already like our brains were already formed in lots of ways, And similarly, he was talking about how like people got started in like Maya and had to like migrate to Blender and other tools that are dominantly used today. But the kids growing up started in those same tools, right? So the way that their brains have been like trained to work to make stuff, to like organize things in 3D spaces, to like do all the tooling related components of video games are in the modern tools, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was talking about how like he can actually start to see this now with the younger people coming in.
They're real intuitive.
They're fast, right? Because they just like they know how to operate these things, and everybody else in the more the old guard has been adapting to change after change after change. And so stuff is just like a little slower,
We got all this baggage of like how we used to do things, still cobwebbing up our brain wrinkles.
Anyways, it's a good episode. I recommend checking that thing out.
Okay. So I think that's all the news we've got. Let's get into some questions from our listeners over at podcast.bscotch.net. The highest upvoted question comes from Jumpylumpa Leapylow, who says, this is Degeki, who says, what is your favorite mundane task? Mine is making the bed. Pop in some earbuds, play an audiobook, and go to town on all them bed sheets and blankets. How long is this taking? I have to make 5 of them so it can take well. Plus, the end result is that awesome feeling you get at the end of the day when you slide into a freshly made bed.
That's true.
So cozy.
Yep. Hey, there's quite a few of them that I think, like coming off of doing like the really intense design work or the art, especially this last year. Even just unloading the dishwasher again, because there's a very clear end,
things have a home and you could finish it.
Dishes. That's my thing.
Yeah.
It's not even the dishwasher. I like washing the dishes. That's my mundane task.
Just hand washing them.
Yeah. Just because it's also like, for me, the dishwasher is too many steps because it's like, you got to get the dishes sort of like prepped, put them in there, slot them in. It's like a puzzle, but then you still don't have usable dishes. Now there's some time that's got to pass, and then you got to unload them. Right?
It's a constant stream of decisions of also like, so how do I put it in, and do I run it now, or
does it fit?
It's definitely a difference in a scale because as soon as I used to do more.
Yeah, when you got 4 people, 5 people, 6 people in your house, that dishwasher.
Yep.
You need one of those industrial ones, that they use in restaurants. For us, it's just 2 of us in the house, so just listening to some music, just jamming out, 10 minutes, just scrubbing dishes. It's just a nice little escape. Also pulling weeds when it's not super hot out.
Oh yeah.
But just like, it's like having a patch where it's just like, oh, this is fucked up, and it's just
the same as that bed thing, right? Where it's just like, you finish and it's just like,
and stuff is tidy.
It just looks tidiness.
It started terrible and now it's done. I saw this every now and then on the like programmer humor subreddit. I see these sort of like memes or jokes about how like when people are like teenagers, like they imagine like their ideal future, in as like a software engineer, and they're just like surrounded by like a trillion monitors and blah blah blah. And then it's like once you're a senior programmer, how do you imagine your ideal future? And it's always just like somebody just like gardening. Right? Because it's like the more involved you get in the tech, the more you realize like it's just a never ending stream of problems that will never be solved. Like
which is why it's
done.
Enjoyable, right? That's why it's like fun to do, but also that's why after a while of doing it, you're like
I'm tired, boss.
Could I do something that
being able to finish a thing is nice, even if only for a moment.
Like we have the joke that like you never finish a game, you just stop working on it, right? And like you can finish the dishes, you can finish pulling the weeds out of your garden. Like they'll come back later, but like for now,
I was gonna say like for me, like they never feel done for that reason. It just comes back the next day. So there's only
things can be done for now.
Yeah, there's only one mundane like daily task that I truly enjoy, which is making coffee. It's the only one, and that's the thing. Like the problem with coffee is the same like with I also like making cocktails, but not nearly to the same extent. The problem with both of those things is because they have chemicals in them that fuck with your body. Yeah, you're limited. Yeah, you're limited on how many you can have. So like that's the one downside to me. And so I also like to make tea and stuff as like my or tisanes to get away from caffeine as like my fallback. If I'm in the middle of doing stuff and I'm like I just need a fucking second, then I'll just go downstairs, turn the hot water on. Sometimes I don't even do anything with it. It's like part of that ritual of like getting away from my desk, starting the process, just doing some stuff, and then I get there. But yeah, But for me, the core thing is making coffee. I got my manual hand grinder that is hilariously expensive because all it does is grind coffee by hand. More expensive than any automatic one I've ever owned in my life. But it feels so good. It's just so smooth.
Just grinding that thing.
Yeah. It's like grind that coffee out. It's like, I've got my bi-weekly, I guess every other weekly shipment of freshly roasted coffee from my favorite roaster, So there's a ritual, but it's like Christmas every 2 weeks. I get to go. Like, what is it this time? I get to read the insert about where they got it from and how they decided to roast it, the recommendations for brewing it. all that good stuff, you know. So there's just there's a lot around it where it just every morning it kicks off my day with, like, to me, I associate the coffee ritual with starting the day, turning my brain on, coming to life. And I associate it with any time I'm like, things are getting frazzled and I just need a sec. Yeah, it's like taking a break, using my hands to do something, having all like the smells that are really good, and then the taste experience when I'm done.
That's great.
And getting to like try variations on it as I go on occasion. Like there's just a lot going on there. And the reward every time is like get to drink coffee and stimulate my brain, you know?
Yeah.
So unlike other things where the reward is a little more ephemeral and less tangible and external, like, you know, because like the word of like a thing being tidy, I love, but the fact that it's temporary,
you don't get to eat anything.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that it's temporary instantly makes me already feel anxious about it. When it's,
I will say, now you're making me think, because there's two others that come to mind. One is shaving my head.
that is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one where, again, problem is you can't do it all the time.
Yep.
You know, but like when it's getting a little bit fuzzy and like I'm kind of at the end of the day and I'm just like running out of steam and I just need 10 minutes and just like going and shaving my head and then coming back, it's like, oh,
fresh as a daisy.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm just slick. But also, I don't know if I think some people would consider this mundane, but for me, lifting is great.
Yeah, I would count as
so it's like literally just like slapping on headphones, listening to music, and just being in the gym for an hour and just moving heavy stuff around. Like it's just
one of the weird ones for me that's come up from now that we've moved. When we lived in the city, this wasn't true, but now that like the roads are easier to deal with here in traffic and stuff, filling up the gas tank in the car. Weirdly enough, because the gas station is on the way home from like most places, so it's not out of the way at all. You just pop in, and again, it's like everything about like sort of very easily and so cleanly like filling up and finishing a thing, you know.
Well, and I think the feeling you have of like, to me, there's like a couple things like bringing groceries home. You're like I'm good. Like I got so much food, right? Or like having the laundry done. You're like, I got all the clothes. I don't worry about this shit all week.
Preparedness, I feel like.
Yeah,
that's kind of
got full gas. Yeah, like there's nothing that beats. Yeah, if like on one day, if you have no laundry to do, you got a full tank of gas, and your fridge is full of food. Oh man,
yeah,
what a day! You can do anything that day.
I think that's why like dishes don't work for me, because you do dishes and
they just keep happening,
and then 3 hours later you eat food again. And now there's more dishes.
Yeah,
there's no escape.
Well, for me, we upgraded our sink. So our sink is big, so it can hold a lot of dishes. So it doesn't feel like it's something that we have to like constantly be chipping away at. Like they can kind of pile up for a while and like do them in a batch, you know. So maybe you got to do a sink.
You got a sink
upgrade.
Well, I think because I do still do them in a batch. I think it's that like you so quickly, even with only two of us in the house, it's just all of a sudden it's like we're out of forks. The fuck, you know? It's just like just. All the time, it seems like, no matter what's going on, like it feels like
you need more forks.
I probably should just buy like 20.
You got some kitchen bottleneck issues. It sounds like.
Yeah,
solve this bad boy.
Yeah, don't blame the chore of doing the dishes. That's a separate problem.
I don't know. It's just you
big
can't,
fork.
You can't make food or eat without suddenly there being like 20 new dishes, you know. And it's just it's like, could we just? I do find myself actually.
That's why you got to order Indian food more often and just eat with your hands. You know, you just got your plate.
I design my own cooking experience and eating experience around like I put everything in one skillet and then it all goes into one plate to eat it out of, so that I can minimize my dish usage as part of the process. You know, because it's
a lot. It is a lot. Our next question comes from Mimmabip Gourkee, who says, will you be running ads for Crashlands 2? How do you decide which countries to advertise to, how much to spend, and the goals from running the ad?
Yes,
so,
we already did, in fact.
Yeah, so ads are miserable and ineffective. I think I'll start there. They're expensive. They don't work very well. And if you're, especially like in the indie space where you're selling games a lot cheaper than a AAA, the amount of like traffic you have to generate with ads is really high. There are some people who can have managed to make it work, at least to some extent and scale. But just like with any aspect of this stuff, to get it to work requires a fuckload of experimentation and time and money. And because with ads too, like they don't scale. Like you can't just throw more money at the same choice and then have that work. And so it's also very misleading. So you'll see like indies talking about paid ads and like what worked and didn't work, and they'll give some numbers and be like, oh, it cost me like $1 per wish list to do whatever, right? And then you'll see that they spent like $20 in ads, right?
Yeah.
And you can get a lot of ads and a lot of context to work at a really low scale.
Because then they can be kind of like hyper targeted or
or just when the people
Just
who
a
are
little
selling
base.
ads are trying to make it look good for your first few dollars, right?
because they want to lure you in, you know.
Yeah,
Which is a thing.
And when you don't have a lot of money throughout it, you are going to spend a lot more effort being really targeted and that kind of stuff, right? But all those same people, when they then throw like $1,000 at it, or end up inevitably disappointed. It's really hard to do it well and get it to scale. And that's why there are people whose whole job and whole companies even are about how do we min-max the shit out of ads. But you only have access to that if you're going to be spending tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in ads.
But also those people are the reason that ads are ineffective, because they try to find all these ways to cheese shit. So everybody's probably noticed, like if you Google any company at all, any company, the top result will be its competitor.
Yeah, some other set of companies.
Right? Because the people who make the ads realize like, oh, well, like if we bid really high on that search term, then people have to scroll past our company to get to the thing they really want. Which means these people have trained everybody to ignore ads, right? Because they're trying to game the system all the time. And so ads become less effective, and then they have to show them to more people, which trains more people to ignore them. And then
More
it's just
intrusively.
a stupid
So ads are
cycle.
they're just a rough way to sell games. So
We've done a bunch of experimentation. With
We've
them.
done a lot of
It's clear.
experiments, and the net effect is that on occasion we've been able to like quote unquote buy a wish list. If you think about how the numbers work out, right? For like Crashlands 2 at something like $5 a wish list, which it sounds like pretty decent. I've seen numbers as low as like $3 a wish list for really small things, right?
Mhm.
But again, that's for a wish list.
Yeah.
Only something like 10% of wish lists convert at launch, maybe a little higher. And it depends a lot on the game. And so you're talking basically like, if that's the case, then you just spent $50 in effect to sell a $25 game, right? So, so the math doesn't work very well for ads for indie games. It doesn't work very well in general, again, unless you're doing really extensive, really aggressive min-maxing and experiments and stuff. And that is unaffordable for indies. So we do it for other reasons, which is to boost visibility of like a new trailer when it goes live on YouTube. Just throw ads at it.
We use it to spike stuff. So
Yeah.
when we're talking about how the release date, the release announcement works and how ads work with that, it's like we just do a round of ads for the first like basically day or two around that, so that there's more momentum starting with that thing for whatever algorithmic nonsense is going to come downstream. Because it's essentially
it's social proof.
Yeah,
If,
it's
if,
social
a, if a trailer has 100 views, then people will be like, oh, well, nobody gives a shit about this.
Yes.
If it has 100,000 views, people are like, oh, this is
Must be
people are
good.
looking at this.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's this dumb thing where like if you just throw some money at ads, you can get a lot of views on a YouTube video in short order, right? And then that causes people to not dismiss it out of hand and actually watch it.
yes.
Yeah.
Which is stupid.
So
but,
there's
you know.
kind of these like a lot of times what we're doing is using ads for untrackable downstream effects, basically.
Yeah, and that is the biggest selling point. Like if you talk to, so if you're going to spend enough money on ads, then some business person at the ad place will talk to you, right? And what all of them will try to convince you to do is stuff that is not trackable. And they'll all try to make the case to you that, yeah, ads aren't about directly selling the thing. So if you're trying to track it that way, it's always going to show up as being ineffective. Ads are about like long-term visibility of your brand, of your product, of your whatever, and awareness, right? So
Like I was laughing because I saw a clip from a hockey game here in St. Louis, and BJC Healthcare is like the sponsor at this thing, and they had their logo wrapped all around the arena, right? And I'm sitting here being like, if I need medical attention, the fact that this logo was wrapped around a hockey arena.
Strange choice, okay? Because like, do you need it to advertise there? Do you need to advertise at all if you're like one of 3 hospitals?
Well, and again, this is where it's about awareness, right? Where it's like, if there's any choice to be made at all, then people tend to go to what's top of mind.
Yeah.
Right. And the more they see your thing, then the more likely it is that when they get to that point that they are going to make that decision, that they choose your
there's
thing.
a real, like,
But that
there's a
might
real
be 10
rationale
years
to it.
from now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the thing is, if you're a hospital where you charge your patients $100,000 when they walk in the door, like, you can get a lot of mileage out of spending ad money that you might not see the benefit of for 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, ads are cheap relative to the potential revenue.
Yeah.
that you can
Yeah.
It's the same reason why Coca-Cola is advertised everywhere. And it's like, people know what it is, but they just want to make sure that it's always occupying a space in people's brains.
And if people
At
like
all
Coke, it's not
times,
about
yeah.
selling you. It's not about like you saw the ad and then you went and bought a can of Coke that day. It's a lifetime value of a Coca-Cola
Yes.
buyer, right? Which is if they're a Coca-Cola, somebody who loves soda, they're drinking a soda a day at least, right? Someone and they're very brand specific. And so if you get somebody in on your brand, lifetime value of Coca-Cola buyer is probably $10,000.
Yeah, thousands of dollars.
More than that. It really adds up. And so things like a video game that you just sell once and you're done, right? Anything that's a one-off product with a low margin, like a video game. So like, unlike a car, like people don't buy very many cars in their lifetime, right? But a
Versus
single
something like
car is
Raid Shadow
$10,000.
Legends, which does have continuous
Yeah.
purchasing value from its players, right? It's like there's a reason why it's advertised everywhere all the time is because if they get you in,
Yeah,
they're
you just
going to
keep
get a
spending money.
lot of money from you.
So it's in the premium space in something like, I guess in the premium space in general, it's just a really hard to on a per ad campaign be able to say that you made your money, that you made a smart decision with regards to spending that money, right?
Yeah.
Because generally the math won't math.
It's only about optics.
Yeah, and
You're
with
not
Levelhead, we
going
pulled
to
out all the
advertise your way
stops.
into sales.
Yeah. With Levelhead, we pulled out the stops. We did a takeovers on a few gaming websites. And like we did all of the stuff, right? And a lot of what you're doing there is to basically, because like I said earlier in the podcast, it's about the attention economy. Like, can you make people aware? Like, it's one of the most frustrating things I still see today is when we're posting new Crashlands 2 announcement stuff and we get all this positive response. And inevitably, something like a 10th of those responses are, oh, dope. I didn't know that Crashlands 2 was coming out, right? And we've been talking about it for years now, right? In like all of our channels, again, spending money to advertise on YouTube to huge numbers of people, like, I mean, enormous numbers of people, right?
Millions of people.
And we've got our newsletter that goes out to 80,000 people every 6 weeks. We've got our Discord with like whatever it is, like 8,000 users in it. You know, we have all the, and then we have our social media. So we have all access to all these channels where we're talking about what we're doing, but all of it is so ephemeral for the user experience because it's all part of something that just kind of blows by. If they're not there when it happens, it basically didn't happen. And so
it's also tiny, you know.
it's all, yeah. So being able to actually like get somebody to see a thing, even when you know
Miracle,
they would
man.
want to, is really, really hard unless you can somehow saturate the attention economy, which is basically what a big AAA marketing budget does, right? Is on launch day, they take over everything.
Yeah, it's where like you see that Steam bumps down the whole fucking Steam store, right? For some of these really big launches, where it's like just one game.
They take over Steam. They took over every major news.
You guys remember when
they take over everything?
Super Mario, was it Super Mario Run?
Yeah.
What was the mobile game?
Yep, they gave them all the feature spots.
Complete takeover of the App Store. And we saw that. We were like, I feel so
Brutal.
fucking bad for anybody else trying to launch a game that week. I think it was like a whole week that the entire App Store was every feature spot was given to that one game, right? And like there's a decent chance they paid for that. Like,
well, actually, I would bet
we
they
don't like
didn't
we don't
need
know.
to because
I don't think they did. Yeah.
because the apps, because that was the first Nintendo game to go to mobile, right?
That's how Apple made their money on it.
Yeah.
I would bet Apple was like literally whatever Nintendo asked for, we will do, right? So
100%.
to get a Nintendo game on,
But it was weird because it was a very Nintendo-y thing to be like, we want to make sure that no other games get acknowledged to even exist this week, right?
That is,
and that to me felt very much like something that like Nintendo had to be really pushing hard for. Because like imagine if it was like Super Mario featured alongside all these other games that have equal
weight
scale in the store, and like Nintendo doesn't like that. Their whole marketing approach is like, we're the only game in town, right? And so I don't know.
But there's,
I know Apple doesn't really do those kinds of deals, but I feel like something had.
They wouldn't need to. Because Apple takes a 30% cut of all revenue. Yeah, they already.
That's true.
They already get a deal every time. But I think the thing we use it for then is basically these spikes to try to strategically like judo it so it makes sense in the long run, where we're not spending money continuously on ads, right? We've never, like, we tried a little bit of that with something I think maybe with Levelhead for a while. It just doesn't make any sense, because actually what you need and what you're trying to do is use the ads similar to the press, everything we always talk about, which is like using all these things to try to spike your way into one of the algorithmic feedback loops.
You're trying to capitalize on a moment.
Yes. Because
it's
if you
not
can do
it's
that,
not about a continuous slow burn, because algorithms don't boost you.
They don't care. Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. So if you can,
and is that problem with a moment is it requires everybody to be looking, right? And that's where.
Yeah. You're never going to get saturation as an indie. You know what I mean? Like
you can't afford it. It's just
you
too
can't
expensive.
afford it. It's a crazy cost. I mean, you look at the cost, like the marketing costs for AAA games, and they're insane, absolutely crazy. Like there's millions and millions and millions of dollars just for the marketing angle of stuff, right? And it's like what you get with that is that everybody knows that Call of Duty exists and that the next one's coming out, or even if you don't want to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, but also with stuff like that, there's other clever things that have happened. So like, because Call of Duty is Activision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's the Battle.net launcher app that you have. It's like they've very cleverly like just created their own ecosystem where they can promote their own games. So I know that like for a lot of my my WoW guild mates, they don't have Steam.
Yeah.
They don't have any other store. They just have this launcher. And so whatever is shown to them on that launcher, that's the entire games industry as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's perfect. Right. And the thing is, like every person every indie essentially tries to recreate something like that by,
That's what our newsletter is.
Yeah, you make your email newsletter. You make you put out some tweets or whatever, where it's like somewhere where you have.
That's what this podcast is. Like it's a space where it's just us in the space.
Yeah,
Yeah. Where we actually get the time to talk about stuff and show the things we want to show, and people are there to look at it. But yeah, well, as soon as you join the fray, like once you're on Steam, once you're on Google Play, once you're on the App Store, you're just in the pile at that point. And
so you try to use the ads to like sort of like stand up on a little footstool is kind of how we do it. Get a little higher.
And so, and we kind of think about it like we internally kind of like try to juice the algorithm, which is like if we're having like a sale or there's like Steam Next Fest or some kind of a event that we're participating in, where that event is already going to boost the game's visibility in terms of like how many people are visiting it on the store, how many wish lists it's getting, stuff like that, then that's a moment where the game is surging in popularity, sort of in terms of the way the algorithm would be looking at it, right? Mm-hmm. So like, okay, well, if we throw some ad money at it in that moment, then that may give it a little bit more of a boost, and it may push it into some kind of a tipping point where it meets some kind of a threshold that now it gets shown to even more people, and then you can get kind of like a runaway effect off of it. But like we're saying, if you spend that same amount of ad money just in the middle of nothing, like when there's nothing happening, then it's not multiplying off of anything. And you don't. Yeah,
I guess once you understand that, like that, all the success that we're talking about trying to achieve here is exponential. It's a power curve based thing. Then I think it's a lot of the things make sense. Where it's like it's not about spending $1,000 to make $1,000, right? Because that one, you're not going to do that with ads. But two, like you try to spend that $1,000 to push whatever's happening up
into a
the
new
ramp.
tier.
Yeah, to go up to like $10,000. You're trying
that something else makes you extra.
Exactly. It's just not directly a linear thing. And so it's like you're just not gonna. There's certain amounts where you're again at the very bottom end where you're paying for stuff and it seems like it works, and then in this giant chasm where you're just gonna throw money at it and it just doesn't seem like it does anything.
Yeah, I think a concrete example of that is Steam's Discovery Queue, which it's mysterious in terms of how you get up there. So that's the thing where if you're on Steam, it'll be like, hey, check out your queue, your Discovery Queue. And you can just like click through. It'll show you some games that either are really popular or it thinks you'll like based on your other games that you have, right? And that thing is extremely effective at generating wish lists and supposedly sales, right? But definitely wish lists anyway. And like that's the target of anybody who's like really trying to make Steam work for their game. Like their target the whole time is like get into the Discovery Queue somehow, right? And so there are all these like theories and ideas about how you get in there. Ultimately, it comes down to if you've got enough attention in some moment on your game and there's enough traffic coming into Steam because of what your game is doing, then and it gets high enough that you basically like catch the algorithm and it's like, oh, this is now a Discovery Queue candidate, and it puts you in the queue, right? Yeah. And if you get in the queue, then all of a sudden stuff really takes off, right? But you don't just get in there because you put your store page up or because of any reason at all, except for like
it's
external factors hit some threshold and you go into it. And so our strategy has always been like, given that continuous visibility is like theoretically good because it increases likelihood that any one person sees it, things are less ephemeral, they're less like time based, right? But it's useless if you can't saturate the market. So whatever, right? Then what's left is basically to say we're kind of stuck with the ephemeral bits, but we can try to use an ephemeral moment to catch something less ephemeral, right?
Yes.
So if we use a moment to spike everything in the hopes that Steam is like, ooh, external traffic. People must be into Crashlands 2 right now. Let's put it in the discovery queue. And that lasts a week.
It's even the same. That strategy is the exact same with regards to the press and platforms too. It's like the result of the announcement being, if you talk to Google or Apple about like featuring the game, right? It's the same thing where it's like you're doing this little spike moment thing.
Convert that brief moment into something long term.
Yeah.
Because the metaphor would be like, you're sailing your ship and the winds start blowing, right? And like, the ad spend is you putting up your sail, right?
Yeah.
But like, if there's no wind, doesn't fucking matter if you put that sail up, right? Like it's gotta be like riding on something. So that's kind of the strategy that we use for that. And again, it's not like an astronomical amount of money. It's just like enough that we think we can kind of like try to bump it up into some.
Yeah, and it's a lot for an indie, right? Because it's almost any amount is. And
I'm more saying like compared to.
Yeah, well, compared to our overall costs and compared to AAA, like it's like we don't have a marketing budget that's like a significant fraction of our overall budget because, again,
we can't.
Even if we did, that it's not enough, and so we would just be throwing that money away. And so we instead say like, okay, if we spend like a few $100 or a few $1,000 here and there on occasion to try to boost something, then maybe we'll get lucky and catch a thing. I will say historically, we've never successfully done it, right? Because we also don't know what the magic numbers are for these things. And we're, of course, very hesitant to spend a bunch of money because if we do that and it also doesn't work, then that sucks. That's just a black hole we throw.
But you also can't tell. You can't tell because, like, usually, again, we're trying to ride certain moments. So, if we inject, say, you spend a couple $1,000s injecting some stuff at like when Steam Next Fest starts or something, you don't
know if you ended up better off than you would have
exactly
without doing it. Yep.
And this is why
it's the confounding variables problem. Yeah, so I mean, and I've always been in the camp that like that ads are they're the rain dance of business. You know, it's like this thing that you do, and you're like, I think it helps. You know,
I mean, there's a logic there that makes sense. You know, so like
people do need to know about your shit in order to buy it. So
and like you can reason your way through it. When on the other end, when you try to tease out whether it actually worked or not, you can never answer the question. And so you just do it on faith and hope that you're doing it right or that you're doing it in the right way or you're spending the right amount. I don't know.
It doesn't do nothing, but you can't quite tell what the fuck it does do. You know what I mean? That's kind of
the one thing it does do is cost a lot of money. That part.
Yeah, it does do that.
Yep.
So that's good.
Well, I think it's part of the whole, it's part of what's so frustrating about running a business like this, where you're making a thing and you're trying to get attention on it. And because it's one off, you can't like accumulate attention in the same way you can with like a software as a service or something. You know,
right.
Is every aspect of the business is exactly like that, where you'll always know something is going to cost you. You know, so if you're talking to a publisher, they're like, we're gonna take 50% of your post store cut revenue in exchange for all the stuff that we're doing. You know, and you're like, okay, well, I know how much that costs. What is the value of what you're providing? And then
they're like, don't know.
Just a big old shrug. You know, who the fuck knows, right? Mm-hmm. And it's
something.
Ads, same deal. It's like you know what our cost. Like I know what our cost per click is to do a YouTube ad or whatever, right? And but what's the value of that click?
What's the value?
Who the fuck knows?
Which does tell you though, if you are an indie, you're making a game and you get solicitations from ad companies, which you will. They will specifically say, we can get you this many installs, blah, blah, blah. But they will never actually commit to it in any kind of a hard way. At the end of the day, they just will use that to bait you. If anybody gives you concrete numbers of what kinds of results you can get from ads, they're just straight up scamming.
Contractual guarantee.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want. If you guarantee it contractually, if you're like, hey, we'll do this for you and we're going to get you 10,000 installs, and if it doesn't work, then we'll pay you the difference. No one does that because
again, because also they can't prove whether you were going to get those installs anyway.
The closest you can get to that in the market of like business stuff is a minimum guarantee of some sort. But those, again, like we've had some offers for Crashlands too with minimum guarantees for various kinds of publishing arrangements. And again, even you now know a piece of what you're going to get, and you still know fully what it's going to cost. It's going to cost half of all of your revenue to get that minimum guarantee, right? But because you don't know how much revenue you're going to generate, you don't know, is that a decent deal? Or am I going to generate $1 million of revenue? They gave me $100,000 and I have to give them $500,000, right?
Yep.
Is that what's going to happen? And in exchange, like, did they actually help to make it so I made that $1 million? Or
are they just taking some?
Or are they just taking it?
Yeah.
Because
Now,
contractually, they're only obligated to take your money.
Yeah, they will.
But they will. But whether or not they can actually achieve what they say they can, which is basically like increase the number of units moved to compensate for that, so that, because that's the whole theory of a publisher or ads, all these kinds of systems is the same, right? Which is you put some money in, they give you something back, and the arrangement is they're supposedly making it so that you sell more units than you would have otherwise.
Or that you can finish the game.
That effect is worth it. Or that you can finish the game. That's a different kind of category, right? But what we hear most from publishers when we're like, oh yeah, we actually don't need funding to complete the game, then their next move is, okay, well, we can do advertising, we can do all this marketing stuff, we can do all these things to make sure the game is successful. So now we'll do that in exchange for X% of your revenue, right? But that's all nebulous. Honestly. Who the fuck knows? There's no way to find out at the end if they actually did it. And so the question that you're asking is like, do I believe that they can double my revenue by whatever they're going to do?
Yeah, I think my overall take is basically that if you don't need money to finish making a game, then you should not work with a publisher, and you should instead just pay some money for a PR company or something like that.
Yeah.
Because
flat rate. If you need money to finish a game, that's a very different thing. And then that's a lot of things make a lot more sense in terms of like, all the logic is different there, right? Yeah.
But otherwise don't.
Yep.
Yeah. Or if you are literally not like, don't want to touch any questions about marketing, et cetera, want to turn that over. But again, still, that's a service. That's a service that somebody can provide with some kind of a known fee that doesn't have to be coupled to a percentage of your revenue, right?
Yep. Taking all your money. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the percentage of revenue thing is basically when there's enough skin in the game. That's basically like, that's what's going to happen if you're getting minimum guarantees and that kind of stuff, is you're not going to be able to do that and escape from some kind of revenue share model.
Yeah. And we said this before, but never take a publisher deal where they aren't offering some amount of money up front. Because if they just say like, we'll promote the game in exchange for this amount of your revenue, but also like, we're not going to pay you anything.
Also, we're not going to guarantee, you can't guarantee results.
Yeah, that means there's only upside for them.
Yeah.
They don't have to recoup any money. They're just going to take your money and not do
predatory.
So be careful of all that stuff. But yeah, so ads are crazy. They're complicated. I don't know. There's a lot to it. But that's all the time we have for this week. I would like to thank our producers, Fat Bart and Sampa DaCosta, for putting the podcast together. And thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running, especially right now as we're getting surges of people. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the Discord, a way for you to donate, and links to the podcast archives. And if you haven't yet, head on over to Steam and give Crashlands 2 a wish list. Get onto the App Store, get your pre-order, get over to the Google Play, pre-register, do all that stuff. It is up. It's up on all the stores, and it'll be coming on April 10th. So get ready.
Buckle your pants.
Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.